Hello, Prime Media audiences. This is Ladette, your host, here with a special guest today. His name is Digafie Debalke. I'm really honored that he has joined us today. Hello, Digafie. Thank you so much for joining me at the studio here. I really appreciate you taking your time from your busy schedule. Please take a moment and explain to our audiences what you do and kind of introduce yourself.
My pleasure. Yes, my name is Digafie Debalke, as you mentioned. My academic background is on peace building, reconciliation, conflict resolution, and management. I usually introduce myself as peace and security analyst. My academic as well as my professional activities are more around the identity-based conflict, the role of diaspora in peace building, and the larger idea of reconciliation and peace building in sort of post-conflict societies. In the past, I have worked most of my professional life in Canada and in University for Peace in Costa Rica and Toronto. I have worked in these professional areas in different capacity with different organizations, NGOs and civil society. So I came back to Ethiopia after the reform agenda in order to see what I can assist and what I can be part of in peace building and reconciliation work here in Ethiopia.
So you're definitely busy because we obviously have a lot of issues, conflicts or debates or even just building democracy and moving the country forward from what we have been before towards some form of change. I wanted to start talking about the conflict that's still ongoing. Currently, there is news that TPLF is attacking some parts of the Afar region and that there's a lot of humanitarian catastrophe happening because of that. I think it was about 2 weeks ago or so, prior to the AU summit. I remember seeing a lot of officials traveling to Afar region and they were visiting. Is this something that TPLF was sort of taking advantage of while the country was somewhat busy with the AU summit? What happened? I thought, the withdrawal from that area and then the fact that TPLF had also retreated, I thought we were actually in some sort of an agreement or somewhat going towards peaceful resolution.
I think we have to contextualize the very nature of TPLF within the context of conflict. The very nature of TPLF is from the very beginning, not just last 2, 3 or 1 year. The group's nature as an organization, as a political organization, is deeply embedded in violence. The very formation of itself historically, if we go back and look at how they came to be, I think it's worth remembering the historical context. What is happening right now is that given that Afar is strategically important for the country, for Ethiopia, it's a gateway for different port-related businesses, I think the primary idea of TPLF is one, to send the international community a message that we're still a force to be reckoned with. I think that's what they're trying to do, regardless of the military suffering, the military defeat they have suffered over the last couple of months. As you recall, not too long ago, that they have declared that there is no government in Addis Ababa to negotiate with because we're entering Addis Ababa, which is not true. And then once the government took decisive measures, they retreated back to their base and then again started launching attack on Afar region. I think the idea that TPLF will choke the country through that line is sort of a psychological message they're trying to send, that they can disrupt supplies and those kind of routes to broader trade areas. And I think what we are seeing with that attack on Afar region is that One, we are seeing the determination and the decisive action by the people of Afar and the regional government to resist and push back and make sure that the TPLF forces are not really approaching the main key lines, disrupting any activity, trade activity in the country. I think that has been affirmed. The point you raised is that is TPLF taking an advantage that the last AU summit sort of, first of all, according to TPLF, the AU summit wasn't supposed to take place in Addis Ababa because Addis Ababa is not a safe city, according to their propaganda, or the government is not capable. But I think the government proved otherwise. And that's a big success as far as the government and the people of Ethiopia is concerned. Whether they're taking advantage of that busy weeks, I don't think, in my view, the defense forces and the regional forces have really let the guard down to make sure to give an opportunity for TPLF to infiltrate or move forward. I think one thing the public needs to know, whether the international community or the public, it's really easy to gain attention within the international media or international platforms by dispatching small forces and sort of creating that narrative that we are still active militarily. I think that's what they're trying to do. Regardless, however, the government needs to I don't know, I'm not a military strategist, what the next move is, but I think from what I'm hearing that the government is committed to making sure that that trade route, that line is safe at all times. But I think the international community needs also to know this, that on one hand we hear the story of starving people in Tigray, on the other hand the TPLF forces are marching in different parts, sort of operating. There is no way you can fight military operations or launch a military operation without having enough supplies, enough resources. So I think it's time to pause and reflect on that. Why do you starve your own people, and yet you have food to feed your military, your soldiers? So I think it's time for the international community to examine what the truth and what the reality is, and distinguish between the fiction and the truth between what is happening in Tigray and Afar region. And I think the Afar region also have shown a great commitment to making sure that the rest of Ethiopia is not choked by TPLF rebels.
They're very brave and obviously have been protecting and safeguarding that area. Starting from with the little resources that they had, and obviously eventually getting some help, but definitely brave people in that area. Let's move on to some of the footages that I have seen from Lalibela area, where TPLF has completely destroyed like hospitals and so forth, and it's really sad. Any rebuilding efforts that you are aware of? How is the people there on the ground? How are they recouping from this terror act?
A terror act indeed. When you look at the military operations where the TPLF focused on, the Afar region, Lalibela, and key areas. Lalibela is one of those areas really seeing a devastating effect. The reason for that is, as we all know, Lalibela is a historic site, well recognized internationally, very important for the Ethiopian people, including the people of Tigray. Regardless of that historical value, nationally and internationally, when you look at what has happened in that region, it breaks your heart. And you say, why? Why all this destruction? Sort of property damage, lives lost, historical sites being attacked, so on and so forth. What is the message here? The message is that we don't care. We really don't care about historical site. We don't care about anything. As long as few of us are not in power, we're willing to destroy everything. It's as simple as that. There's no really, it's not physics, or it's not, to sort of unpack this. when you also look at the nature of the attack in areas like Lalibela, where TPLF briefly occupied and retreated after the defense forces took decisive measure, is individual families have been attacked, communities being attacked, institutions being attacked, universities being attacked, medical centers being attacked, religious sites being attacked. This, even by the standard of terrorist organizations, really is very, very strange to really look at and say, why do you do this? You know, the fact of the matter is, the people on the Amhara region and Tigray region, they are sort of attached naturally to live together. And trying to sort of distort that natural equilibrium and natural connection and come out as militarily victorious is one. TPLF had this very disturbing, what psychoanalysts call chosen glory and chosen trauma. On one hand, you can hear they discussing the trauma, historical trauma they suffered under whatever the regime they claim to be. On the other hand, you say, we are invincible. We can attack anywhere. Nobody can defeat us. You know, war is our traditional dance, whatever they call. And they move in and out of those two narratives. When it fits, they become heroes, militarily sort of invincible. Nobody can touch them. When it's not fitting, also they retreat back to that victim space. This is very, very disturbing for many reasons. One, the Ethiopian people, regardless of their historical, whether foreign intervention or other things, they have lived together for a long time, for very, very long time. And when we say that, it's not about just living together. They have been intermarried, they have shared cultural values, religious norms, on those kind of things. Sort of rejecting all of that and putting the lives of those who lived side by side in danger. And also, when you hear the historical intergenerational transmission, what they have been telling the people about the other, it's sort of nurturing animosity, hate, revenge. And I don't think what really troubles me is how did these people sat at the helm of power for 27 years with this notion of festering hate, animosity, revenge, corruption, greed, and all those kind of things. It makes you wonder, how is that even possible to be at the highest level of leading this country? And yet, when you hear their stories, what they have been doing over the last year or so, it's a national tragedy, really. The Ethiopian people have been through a lot of historic challenges. But when you look at this particular time in the history of Ethiopia, that's what makes it the problem multi-layered and complex, because it is within, people who have benefited, lived a very luxurious life in the country, amassed sort of massive amount of resources, money, and at the same time, when you think about it and you say, the military equipment, resources they're using to kill the Ethiopian people are bought by Ethiopian people, taxpayers' money. The actual resource that the Ethiopian people have purchased to defend their country, national interest. And that really gets to the bottom of your soul, that what does that a poor farming family member has to do with this? Burning their houses or their crops, or raping their children or their wives and the children and daughters. So what has happened in Lalibela is sort of a microcosm description of the TPLF, who they are as an organization, who they are as a group, and the language of peace really doesn't resonate with these people. And I hope, I don't know where they go from this, and by destroying their own area and destroying other parts of the country, and what benefit will come out of this. But I think what they're trying to do, they're trying to salvage that glory narrative they have constructed, sort of, we cannot be defeated kind of empty words. And what is in Afar, in Lalibela, in the Amhara regions, different parts of the country, is that can we salvage that narrative we have constructed? If we completely being defeated, that narrative is going to collapse. So that struggle is costing people of Tigray a lot, and the younger generation is paying huge price. I think my message is that perhaps the younger generation in Tigray must just stop and think and say, why all of this? And the government during the law enforcement operation have tried its maximum best to provide with food, shelter, medicine, education before the withdrawal of the Ethiopian Defense Forces from Tigray. So now we are hearing that there's a lack of food, there's lack of medicine, there's lack of this, but there's a capacity to fight. This doesn't bode well. It doesn't sit well when you sort of put those two things together. Starving people just don't go and kill other people, So I think it has to be seen within the context of the very nature of the group itself, what is happening in Lalibela or elsewhere. And I hope they can come to some kind of census and say, look, this is not going to get us anywhere. Maybe not, but that's my hope and prayer.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think the young people, the people of Tigray are suffering. We don't know what's happening there, but obviously it's clear that if they are under a group that is willing to destroy anything just to make a point, because technically that's been the reason for this whole conflict, is they want to make a point, they want to be the ones on top, and they wanted to continue to use this country as their playground, basically. And if that didn't work out, then we'll destroy everything. And I guess with you working in peace and conflict, it sounds like a very manipulative group, and I feel bad as well for the innocent people in Tigray who may not even understand the reasons, who may be told that no one likes you or no one cares about your life and your life is meaningless and so forth, in order to fuel more hate and more division amongst Ethiopians. Yes, so I really hope that this conflict somehow needs to come to a conclusion, and we need to hear from the people from Tigray, from the ordinary citizens. I don't think they've had the liberty of speaking freely like the rest of the regions in Ethiopia. I don't think they've been able to exercise fully what they would like to think and express it in like other regions. Thank you, Digafie. I want to go to the next question or next discussion point, which is Oromia. Clearly, there are issues in the Oromia region. It's been about 5 months since I've been in Addis, and I get to hear from family members, other people that I interact with, some of the issues that are heard in different parts of Oromia, whether it's in Wallagga, Ambo, or places like Guji. There are NGO employees being killed, government employees, government supporters, and then also just random people. And from my understanding, it sounds like there is a couple of groups. It's not just one group. It's not just, OLA, or it's not just one, gang. It seems like there is a couple of groups that are running these towns, and some also involve government employees. And I think it's, in regard, maybe it has a lot to do with, gaining money, corruption. It may also be for political reasons, for having different ideologies, but for whatever reason, the bottom line is there are victims in the Oromia region. There are people that are being attacked, being killed. And I think every one of us can agree on that, is that there's obviously people being killed. The other thing is, every time there are, I've heard people being killed, some people try to take advantage of this as another political agenda, and want to make this about Oromo and Amara issues. And from my understanding is that I'm pretty sure there could have been a time or a place that has happened, but I also hear consistently Oromos losing their lives in Oromia. So I am pretty sure this is something that the government is, have it on their agenda in some place. As we know, we've had, several layers of things to work on. In Ethiopia, it's like we've had, so many things to that needs to be worked on, and this is one of them, I'm pretty sure. What are your knowledge about that? What are your thoughts, and what are some of the things that the public has been misrepresenting about this region that you think is not helping the situation?
I think the key word you raised in your question is corruption. Corruption, we can look at it in two ways. One is, of course, corruption as far as monetary value is concerned. The other one is the moral corruption, the how we see each other as human beings. That has been shown in different parts of the country over the last few years, sort of disregard to human life, and trying to show one's strength by murdering civilians or children or women. And really, that's not a military strength. It doesn't really make sense. But I think where we have to be careful is that, yes, some of these attacks, some of these mass murders are ethnically motivated. But I think one thing we have to remember is the DNA of this country cannot be easily distinguished. Unless you are a DNA expert and just taking samples and doing, oh, you are Amhara, you are Oromo, you are this. Mm-hmm. We are so intertwined that anyone who claims to say that I have killed Amhara or I have killed this ethnic group might be making a massive mistake. How do you know that you are this identity group? I mean, you just can't burn a village and say, oh, I eliminated this ethnic group. It's when you look at it from science point of view, it's so rudimentary, it's so cruel, and it's so sad to say that yes, sometimes people with certain linguistic capacity might congregate in some similar geographic area. That doesn't mean they belong to that particular ethnic group, let alone today in the 21st century, our DNA as Ethiopians and as people of this country is intertwined with the most of the world, through archaeology, through many things we can trace that. So the idea that one can focus on a particular ethnic group and then the reaction is sort of amplifying that argument, mm-hmm. buying into that argument, saying that, what's unique about this country is during peace times and war times, during authoritarian regimes, during all the challenging times, people have died, imprisoned, exiled, tortured together. We have to really give a historical context and scientific context to the identity issue here. And if we continue these small tent compartments, saying that, whether identity is a social construct or a scientific thing, that's another discussion. But what is happening in Wolaga and parts of, you mentioned Guji and some areas it's a human tragedy. For me, it breaks my heart, regardless of who is the victim. One, it breaks my heart for those who are engaged in this kind of violence. They have diminished their humanity. They have diminished the decency of the people of this country. That going around burning villages or killing people doesn't really send any clear message or any value to their cause, whatever their cause is. Second, the victims and the survivors, the displaced. We all were born and grew up in this country. And we remember going from one corner of the other to the other end of the country, working, living, studying. And that's not too long ago. So that's the country I know and the country you know and most of us know. But to say that, I have identified every single individual out of 100 something I have killed, they are Amhara, to say that is absolute nonsense. Really. I'm not saying that those people are not going to be Amhara. There's potential. But the killing is the killing of Ethiopians, regardless of their ethnic identity. The diminishing of our humanity collectively. So when we say something happened in this part of the country and this number of people died, there is something dying in us as people. Something being lost, something being diminished. This is not a political story. This is not a military story. This is a human story. A child who lost her father or her mother growing orphan is the burden of the country. The country has to take responsibility for that. So my message to people who are quick to amplify those voices of those, I think, let me go. We are helping those people who wanted to create this kind of environment in the country that by killing certain ethnic groups.
Yeah, let me just interrupt you, sorry. I also forgot to mention that there's also trained TPLF members in the Oromia region from during the time of the 27 years of rule, where they have trained intelligence people around Oromia, and who knows, when you were saying that, we don't know which ethnicity, what ethnicity we are all Ethiopians, but that's also, there could be an interest group that could be fueling this type of conflict in that region. Could that be possible?
I think that's a very important point you're raising. Over the last number of years, since the reform agenda was sort of became public in Ethiopia, over the last, April 2nd, 2016, I think, 2018, 2016. You cannot fight your enemy by using the textbook that your enemy gave you. You see, you mentioned TPLF agents being in Oromia region. Sometimes people say that the damage TPLF inflicted on Ethiopia is political. I take it even one step further. It's cultural, it's moral, it's ethical, it's education. Many things have been attacked in this country. Even the very essence of moral pillars were attacked. You can step on anybody, do anything, and get money. That has been the reality over the last 27 years. So when we refer to those 27 years, we have to look at the whole damage, the whole destruction, the whole attack on human decency and human dignity, reducing people to commodities, you see. So, yes, it's possible some agents are really using that skilled maneuvering and the skilled manipulation of history, skilled manipulation of realities to their own advantage. TPLF has made it clear that they are not going to rest until this country, is dismantled and destroyed. So what we need to do is those who are serving this agenda as an agents, knowingly or unknowingly, need to open their eyes. And for whatever reason, in this country, We have given a chance after chance after chance to get our house in order. And I must say, I'm not impressed how we utilize those chances. This is another chance to make sure that we as a country, as a people, can wake up and say, look, we're sick and tired of this. I want to raise my children in a peaceful environment. I want my children to go to school, whether they are in Elam or Lagga or Agaro or Dejan or wherever they are, without any fear of being attacked or threatened. So the ultimate destiny of this country should be that regardless of our whatever differences we might imagine, whatever aspirations we have, this country is geographically, resource-wise enough for everybody. We can come together and build a new nation. If we have any grievances, any historical or contemporary grievances, we can bring it to the table and talk. But by killing civilians, by mutilating bodies, by destroying villages, there is absolutely nothing to be accomplished. And except, that idea of the African philosophy, Ubuntu, a person is a person through another person. Individual existence is contradictory in terms. I am here because you're here, regardless of whatever identity you may have. So we have a lot of work to do in terms of waking up from that sleep, from that sleepwalk, and say, enough. Our children are looking at us, and our grandchildren will question us in the future. So the court of history will not be lenient on us if we don't sort these things out. So, I think we have established the fact that TPLF is determined to destroy the country, at whatever cost, but the rest of us has to say, no, this doesn't benefit anybody.
I think we can go on, but we're going to be running out of time shortly, so I just want you to kind of give me in one or two minutes where you see Ethiopia's foreign relations right now as we stand. We've had a few U.S. Congress members that just introduced a bill for sanctions. At the same time, we've had some positive outlooks from the U.S. and other countries. We've been getting some aid or some grants have been approved for Ethiopia. Where do you see where we are right now, and how can we improve our relations?
I think we have to point out one issue here in terms of international relations and diplomacy. I go back to TPLF. Over the last 27 years where they were in power, we thought, whether it's highest level of United Nations or elsewhere, we thought they were representing Ethiopia. But what we have seen over the last 1 year is all of a sudden they are not actually representing Ethiopia, they're representing TPLF. From WHO director to different people in high places, international arena. That made me really sad. It made me sad because the people of Ethiopia trusted them, and the government of Ethiopia, whatever the government at the moment is, allocated those positions as representatives of Ethiopia, not a particular political organization or ethnic group. So now they're flipping and attacking the country they represent. That has never been seen before in any other country international diplomacy. Even if there are differences, those people would have been well respected if they say, okay, both of you are not right. Let's sort of find a middle ground and negotiate and make sure that the country doesn't go to a war. But what we have seen is complete betrayal of the country as a nation. In terms of the international community's response to the conflict and initially to the law enforcement operation is precisely those who are appointed to represent Ethiopia began to speak for the TPLF, lobbying, making sure that the Congress people in the US or Europe or MPs in the European Parliament don't listen to the voices of Ethiopia. Just listen. We are the victims. that victimhood narrative comes in. So they mobilize their resources. Well, they are not their resources, the Ethiopian resources, money stolen from the national treasure, and use those resources to convince the international community that they are the victims. And there is nobody except a few people to speak for Ethiopia at the international arena. And I think Ethiopian foreign policy needs to learn a lesson from this in the future, what it means to be appointed representing the country. There is no ambiguity. You represent Ethiopia, period. And those who betrayed the country at that level, some countries might even call it treason, did a huge damage to the country's foreign policy and relationship in international diplomacy. So there is a lesson to be learned from here. The network they have established during the 27 years of their reign is very strong within the international network, governments, NGOs, international organizations. And they have really built this con artist kind of behavior, sort of projecting themselves something here and another thing over here. And the international, the foreign ministry and its international network need to wake up and realize that what kind of diplomatic work needs to be done to undo all of this. It has to be intense, it has to be organized, it has to be well planned. And talented, well-positioned, well-informed diplomats need to do their jobs. You see, it's not for the lack of truth that we are here today. It's for the lack of communications and PR work, how we communicated, what kind of language we've used, what kind of platforms. So I think in terms of the international relationship, there's a lot of work needs to be done. As you alluded earlier, that opinions are changing gradually, but there needs to be more work to be done, more intense, more sustained diplomacy and international relations work, and also raising young diplomats from the bottom up, educating them, informing them, nurturing them, mentoring them. And diplomacy is a very complex work. You just can't appoint somebody because they have PhD. It's a different ball of game, you know, from the body language to words you choose to communicate. So I think the government of Ethiopia needs to start sort of breeding new diplomats, young diplomats, informed, educated, understanding regional and global political dynamics. All those kind of things to be put in order for the country to, when we came out of this crisis as a nation, we have a new energy, we have new platform, we have new generation coming in, taking the place. But it's easy to declare war, it's easy to flex your muscle, but it's more complicated to move a country towards peace, diplomacy, and international relations. And I hope the government is looking into that, and all of us has a role to play in that sense.
Wow, thank you so much, Digafie. I think this was a great discussion. I'm really grateful. Again, thank you for coming and joining me. Prime Media audiences, this was our half an hour with Digafie. I will join you next time with another guest. Thank you.